Welcome to the Build and Serve podcast, where we are throwing out the social media, the social norm, and all the other bullshit to focus on one core mission, and that is to build ourselves in the service of others. I'm Andrew Ammons. I'm so happy that you're here. Listen, if you have been following the show for a little bit, if you've gained any value from it, you will have noticed up to this point, I run zero ads. I have nothing to sell here. There is zero intent behind getting anything from you. I am purely sharing some of the things that I have learned, some of the things that I continue to learn today, hoping that I can speed up some of the challenges that you or people that you know may be facing. And I only ask one thing. If you gained any value from this, today's show, previous shows, any future shows, I ask that you share the show. That's the only way that we're able to grow our reach. That's the only way and the best feedback for me to continue sharing some of the things that I've shared. So if you're watching on YouTube or any other platform, you'll notice I'm in a different space today. It's a little bit different. I've actually decided that we need to take this to the next level, so to speak. So I'm actually recording in a studio. It's no longer just a desk set up in my office. So the audio, if we're doing our job, should be a little bit better. And also, I may be speaking a little bit faster because I got the nerves going. I got the nerves going. So when this stuff becomes official, it's like it's just higher stakes. But that's kind of in line with what I wanted to talk to you about. And if you haven't listened to the show, I want to remind you that anything I share, this is not me trying to be a guru. This is not me saying, I know everything, you should listen to me and follow every word that I speak because I'm a know-it-all and I'm better than you. It's actually quite the opposite. It's that I screw up things on a daily basis, right? I constantly struggle in business, in my relationships, in my personal fitness, all the way across the board. But I have been so impacted and so blessed by a few decisions made to have mentors, to have peers, to have people that pour into me and help me walk through some of these challenges in my life. I've seen so much impact from those, I can't help but want to share it. And so that's the purpose of the show. It's a play on words. It's to build and serve because I am a core believer that you cannot serve anybody unless you build yourself. You cannot share what you have not gone through. So if you haven't gone through certain challenges and worked on yourself and generated the next level or next version of you to be able to tackle your own life challenges, then you really cannot be of service to others. It's kind of like the Southwest flight, right? To where if we experience a change in cabin pressure, adults, you put the mask on first before you try to put them on your children or minors. Why is that? It's because we've got to take care of ourselves, not in a selfish manner, but we've got to be able to take care of ourselves, build ourselves, and be strong enough to take care of the people that we love and the people that are counting on us. So, like I said, this is not something that, I just know everything and I come in, I'm going to, preach these things and say, do this or do that. The show is about the reality of the world, the reality and the things that we go through individually. And I'll tell you, lately, I have been feeling a lot of that reality. I've been feeling in one of my businesses in particular lately that some of the challenges we face, there's no way to solve them. I've truly looked multiple times at, is this something I can keep doing? Is there a way out of this? And, I'm reminded when I plug into my peer groups and into more mentors and people like that, when I get into those dark moments where I start to believe my own story that this situation I'm going through is different or harder or more difficult, when I start to actually buy into that, I realize that I'm really not that special. My problems are no more unique than the people that I look up to and aspire to be. They're not more challenging. They're not more difficult. They're not impossible to get through. And when I realize that, it makes me start to think about, okay, what is the difference? I mean, yes, we know that a change in perspective is sometimes all we need to change everything in our lives, right? Especially those critical moments where we are fighting to find the right answer or make the next step. We know sometimes perspective is the only thing that it takes to change. But also, we have to consider, how do we get that change in perspective? And as I said, I've been struggling lately with some of these questions, with some of these challenges in one of the businesses, particularly one that I operate. And as I started to realize that, hey, this really isn't that special, I'm hearing people who've talked about challenges that were far more than what I'm going through right now. Whether it be operational or financially, there are people that I look at who have made it so much further in business and through situations that seem so much more challenging. So if it's not true that this is an impossible situation, then what is true? And as soon as I started thinking about that, it reminded me of one of the most difficult challenges at the time that I went through in the first business that I started. This problem would have arisen, nearly a decade ago. But it was in my first contracting business. And some of you listening may know the story. Most probably don't. But it was a day where we had built up our landscape maintenance business from $0 to, we may have been just shy of a couple $1 million. So not a massive company, but not a small one either. We had moved from me operating it directly to having more staff and more people, bigger clients. Initially things were good. We grew the business at an aggressive rate, and a lot of things that I did, I got a PhD, by the way, in how not to buy a business. So that's a course that I could sell online at this point. Like, I can tell you what not to do and buy a business. So we started a business, we acquired a business to go along with it, and one day we came to the point to where the money, the customers, and the skilled employees we needed ran out. Pretty well all at once. The fact is, we grew at such a rapid rate, we were undercapitalized. Not only did we not have enough cash in the business just to finance the growth we had, we damn sure didn't have enough money in the business to finance the mistakes we'd made as we grew and as we worked with more serious customers. And this was so intense that it came all the way up to a week or two before we weren't going to have enough money to make payroll. And I mean, at the time, we had a huge amount of payroll, certainly for what my skill set was. A bunch of people, a bunch of families counting on us, not to mention my late 20s ego that was at risk if we ended up defaulting or filing bankruptcy or not being able to actually pay the bills. We had a lot at stake, and we were right up within a couple weeks of this challenge of we do not have enough cash to make payroll. We do not have enough receivables coming in the door to be able to meet that payroll, even if we got the work done. This is a serious problem, right? And so I'm sitting there with what was at the time a team member, and this was the one man that I had become comfortable enough with sharing information like this, these challenges. And we're talking through it, and it's like, okay, we've got to make a decision. We've got a decision to make, right? We either give up and close the doors, or we just keep digging a hole and keep trying to figure this out with not changing anything. And as one of my mentors taught me, two choices is not a decision. When you have only two choices, you don't have a decision, you have a dilemma. In order to make a decision, you really need more than two options, right? And so so often what we do is we give ourselves a dilemma. And luckily, in this moment, when I was talking to, a guy's name's Ben, we're talking about the issue, how do we solve this? We ran the normal route of, okay, what receivables do we have? What is our payroll? What extra savings? We ran all that, and we were out. We were out of options. Until one moment, Ben looked at me, and he asked a question. He said, Andrew, what if we didn't have payroll next week or the week after? And I sat back and it's like, well, yeah, that would solve some problems, Ben. Thank you, Mr. Obvious. And he looked back at me and said, no, I'm serious. He said, what if we didn't have the expense of payroll? Would we be able to recover, lick our wounds, grow, and move on? I said, well, yes, of course we would. And that one question, after I got past the absurdity of it, right, gave us the perspective and the room to talk about what and how we could make that a possibility. So I believe Ben's smarter than how he acted in that moment, because he followed that up with, is there a way we could reduce our payroll? Because that's the one thing that keeps hitting us. That's the one thing that's going to hit this week, next week, the week after. And at that time, we had started working with subcontractors in our business. So we had some of our team that was on payroll. We had some that were subcontractors. And as we started working through this, the idea came up, well, we've got a pretty good model working with these subcontractors in a few of our areas. What would happen if we just turned everything to subcontractor? What if in 1 week's time, 2 weeks' time, 3 week time, we transitioned our model and we said, we're going to go to subcontractor pay. And these subcontractors will be either 30 days payable or paid upon paid by our client, by the landscape company's client. It was like, whoa, what kind of room could we have with that? And so we continued to talk through, and of course you can't just snap your fingers and change that on an operation like we were at that time. But we did go through and we were able to buy enough time, derive a game plan, and put that company in a position to be able to not only pay the bills and the demands and meet the customers' needs that we had at the moment, we also created a huge amount of opportunity for some of our existing employees who had aspirations of growing their own business. And so by sitting down and realizing that the box that we all make decisions in daily, that theoretical box, that we're told to think out of, is bullshit in its just entirety. There is no box. Like, we don't need to challenge ourselves to think outside a box because the box doesn't really exist. As soon as we sit down and we start asking these better questions, we can start moving towards better answers, the truth, what we really need to do to achieve and have everything that we need in our life. And it just so happens that it was either this morning or yesterday morning, I read a verse in the Bible, and it really stood out to me. I've been thinking about sharing this story and how it could potentially help you and others who are facing challenges that you don't feel there's a way out. And this doesn't have to be business, by the way. This can be in your personal life. It can be in your relationship. It could be in your physical fitness. It could be in your spiritual life. It could be anywhere. There are problems and challenges that hit us multiple times and typically all at once, right? That hit us and we think there's only one way or another, right? But I read this verse and it just struck me. It's like, okay, this is something that I need to talk about. You need to hear this. This is a valuable conversation we could have. But the verse goes, those who are wise will find a time and way to do what is right. For there is a time and a way for everything, even when a person is in trouble. And I read those words and I was like, this is something that needs to be shared. And there's so much to this that we live these busy lives now. We believe that there's no time. We've just got to keep doing what we're doing. We've got We've got to keep grinding. There's this idea of this 24/7, 365 hustle. But the fact is, some of the most influential, powerful, and successful people I've ever met have they place more time on silence, preparation, and being able to detach themselves from the positions and situations that they're in than most of us who are out here struggling to achieve. Okay, I've one of my mentors and one of the people that I've had exposure to stresses this idea of thinking time, and this is like a tactical thing I'll share with you. This idea of thinking time that he does once a week. Throughout the week, he's gotten a better gauge on all the thoughts that go through his mind and the questions that he asks himself. And he'll jot down throughout the week at any given time these questions. And once a week, I believe his is on Sunday, he goes through all these questions and all these things and these problems and these challenges, and he picks the biggest one, the most important to him. And he sits down in his chair. He's got a specific thinking chair he uses. He sits down in this chair. He writes out that question or that challenge. And he, for 2 hours, has a strategy around thinking time. He turns everything off. He writes as many possible answers as possible, just like the scenario where I was telling with the contract in the landscape maintenance company where here's our problem. We can't make payroll. We either need to give up or give up is really what I felt at the time. Instead of just listing that one answer, that one go-to, he sits down and he begins to write. He says, here's one way to go about this. Here's another way to go about this. And then inevitably when you start answering these questions, you can turn from the question or the answer to the question itself to assertions about what this means, right? Because I can't make payroll, it means this, and it means that I'm a failure, and it means that we're going to have to shut down. One of the things that this man does is he challenges himself with asking what the truth is. And oftentimes we think or we say things, we believe answers to poor questions, and we give an answer to it and we just believe it is truth, but we never stress test those answers and ask the simple question, is it the truth that this is the only two options I have? And I challenge you, if you are walking through any issue, any challenge, if you've derived a couple ways of handling it, but you're still not satisfied with it, or those two ways of handling it are not good answers, they don't have a good outcome, I would challenge you to ask, is it the truth that these are the only two ways to handle this? And if you come up with saying, yeah, that's the truth, that's it, I would challenge you to ask even another question and say, okay, but if that wasn't the truth, what else could be true? If I knew another answer, what would that answer be? And if you commit to writing down what those other answers may be, you'll be shocked at the answers that you come up with. You will find that typically when you end up with answers you don't like, poor quality answers, you are asking poor quality questions. You weren't asking the right question. And it just goes back to the conversation I had with my then employee, now business partner. What if we didn't have payroll? What an absurd question to ask in the middle of a crisis like that. But it was the question that needed to be asked to stoke the creativity, the perspective, and the latitude, quite frankly, to be able to come up with a solution that was strategic, that created growth for us as a company and the people we worked with, and also brought me to the position to be able to have this conversation with you today. And so outside of the ability for us to navigate that challenging time, what we also did was created a growth path. That simple question gave the ability for this particular company to grow, not only grow opportunity for people within it, but also eventually put that employee who was in the room with me, turned business partner, gave him the ability to be in a position to buy the majority equity of that company from me. So I would say that those simple moments, they seem simple, but those not paid attention to moments, I suppose, of what type of question are we asking in moments of trial? A better quality question could be one of those 1 to 5 moments in your life that literally change the whole path of your life, that create opportunity for you and for ones around you, just by realizing that that box that you were told to think outside of never existed in the first place, that you've been limited by the ways that we're taught, that the quality of the answers that you give to the question, the quality of your answer is equal to the quality of your question. And then further, when you give a better quality answer, you make better quality decisions. And when you make better decisions, you take better action. And when you take better action, you get a better result. And here's the biggest part to this, is when you start getting better results in your life, you start having better beliefs in your life. If you haven't listened to the episode on the success cycle, you need to go back a few episodes and listen to how your beliefs always drive your potential. Your potential drives your actions, and your actions drive your results. It's the same thing, but we're taking it an even further step back to say, what are the quality of the questions that you're asking yourself? And in any challenge, what are the questions, what are the answers that are driving the decisions I make, that are driving the actions, which give me the results, which give me the belief? So today, as I walk through some of these challenges in a different business now that I feel like there is no answer to, or I did, I was able to pull on this challenge that I had with my first contracting company and realize that the same questions I ask myself today, the same shitty, poor quality questions about how do I get out of this, or is there a way out of this, versus what is the way out of this? And if I tell myself that there is no good way out of it, say, is that really the truth? And if there was a better answer, what is the answer? These are things that you can use today, and something that I have utilized again in the current time to move myself, move my companies, my family, and my overall well-being to the next level. So I hope that you're able to use that. I hope you can connect to that, plug it directly in your life, because that is the intent for the show. And for today, that is all I've got. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you. We'll see you on the next one.